What's going on, everybody? Shadowman number 9 here, and today I wanted to talk to you about the new Punisher series coming to wherever comic books are sold near you March 9th of this year. Just a couple days away, we're going to get a whole new Punisher series. We've already talked about it in my first video. It's kind of a controversial thing because it seems like a direct result of the Capitol riots and the fact that people were using his logo as a symbol of hate. So now they've effectively created a whole new scenario that's gonna completely rebrand the Punisher, and they've gotten rid of the skull logo. They've gotten rid of everything bad and offensive, and they're gonna start fresh with this new defining series just called The Punisher, I think. But as I was just farting around on the internet, I came across a couple of news articles talking about the new series, and one of them featured Marvel editor Tom Bravoort, who has compared the new series to that of Frank Miller's Daredevil Born Again, which was first released in 1986. Now, I've never read Daredevil Born Again. In fact, I've barely read any Daredevil comics, but not because I dislike the character. There's just so many other books that I've been trying to get through, so I have no real reference in terms of confirming or denying Bravoort's comparisons of the two series. But one book I am familiar with is Punisher Born, and a lot of what's coming from Marvel regarding this new series seems like an unnecessary rehash or reimagining of things already addressed in Punisher Born. So that's what we're going to get into, but first, a word from our sponsors. Okay, so for those of you unaware, Punisher Born, originally published as just Born, kind of like the original Wolverine origin series, was a 4-issue limited series of comics written by Garth Ennis and published by Marvel through Max Comics in 2003. Max Comics is an imprint of Marvel which specializes in adult-only comic book media and was launched in 2001 after Marvel broke away from the CCA, or Comics Code Authority, and created its own rating system. Now, Punisher Born explores the idea that Frank Castle has always been the Punisher, even before his wife and kids were slain in a New York mob execution. That was just simply the straw that broke the camel's back. No, Frank Castle has always been the Punisher, even as far back as his time in Vietnam. Born is a great story. The whole thing is just absolutely brutal. There's a whole ambush scene where every one of Frank's men is just eating lead. Everybody's just dropping like flies, but Frank survives the onslaught, taking out every single enemy that stood before him. An attack that he by all means should not have survived. And in another scene, we witness Frank punishing one of his own men by drowning him to death for raping a female Viet Cong sniper that the platoon had taken hostage, whom he shoots in the head while she's being assaulted. And now the storytelling in this comic is amazing. It actually introduces what I call the other side of the coin. For example, there's the reflection from another character who witnesses the rape and execution of the female sniper, and in his perception of the events, grimly proposes that Frank shooting her, in a sense, saved her, as she would not have survived the brutality of her captivity. As the story plays out, Frank is constantly having this inner monologue with a voice that offers Castle the strength and stamina needed to survive, to maintain an internal state of vigilance, and to wage a permanent war. However, such gifts come at a very high price. I'm not going to go into too much more detail because the book is well worth the read if you haven't checked it out already. I highly implore you to do so, so go check out Punisher Born by Garth Ennis. Daredevil Born Again is a story arc that first appeared in Daredevil issues 227 to 231. It was later reprinted in a graphic novel format, along with the previous issue 226, and a follow-up story arc from Daredevil 232 to 233, which resolved some loose ends from the original story arc. Because of this follow-up story arc has become generally considered part of Born Again. This story arc literally sees both Matt and Karen at their absolute worst. Karen Page is living her best life as a heroin addict that sometimes makes pornos in Mexico, and one day, strapped for cash, sells the information that Matt Murdock is Daredevil for a hit of heroin. Meanwhile, Kingpin is trying to fuck up Matt Murdock's life after learning of his alter ego, using his influence to have the IRS freeze Matt Murdock's accounts, the bank forecloses on his apartment, and Police Lieutenant Nicholas Manalis testifies that he saw Murdock pay a witness to perjure himself. And if that wasn't enough of a shit sandwich to swallow, by coincidence, Matt's girlfriend, Gloriana O'Brien, what the fuck is that name? Sounds made up. Yeah, she's just a girl I met at Braille Camp. She lives in Canada, you wouldn't know her. Okay, well anyway, she breaks up with him and turns to dating his law partner and best friend Foggy Nelson on the rebound. Honestly, from what I've read while researching this book for the video, Froggy is like the only one out of the bunch that's okay. He's definitely not sleeping with pornography fanatics for heroin. Karen! He's not selling that out for some of that sweet, sweet China white smack, Karen! So CBR, or comicbookresources.com, has an article where Tom Bravoort gave the new Punisher series high praise in comparing it to Daredevil Born Again. In an interview with Forbidden Planet TV, Tom Bravoort officially stated, "The best way I've been able to describe it to people so that they can understand what it is, we set out to craft a story that was to Frank Castle sort of what Born Again was to Daredevil. I'm not necessarily saying it's the exact same story, but in the same way that Born Again was a transformative experience for Matt Murdock and for Daredevil as a series, this Punisher run will serve to redefine and change Frank Castle in very meaningful ways." Bravoort also described the 12-issue series as full of just amazing, bloody, and ridiculous pages that will explore concepts at the very core of the Punisher, and go beyond simply reiterating his desire to avenge his slain family. It delves very deeply into Frank Castle's youth and upbringing, and history as we learn the various forces throughout his life that guided him to becoming the Punisher, even before the deaths of his family in that Central Park shooting. And we're really trying to make something that is an enormous touchstone for the character. Like I say, like Born Again. It's too early for me to really make that comparison because Born Again is clearly Born Again, and a lot of people have tried to do stories like that and haven't managed it. But that is our goal, and that is our intention here with the series. Now, I can kind of understand why he's comparing it to Daredevil's Born Again, but at the same time, it sounds like you're taking concepts and ideas from Punisher Born and just doing them over again in a different way. And exploring Frank's youth is something I don't agree with at all. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, the Punisher is a very 2D character. He's been fleshed out before, and sometimes it's worked, and other times it hasn't. But at the end of the day, the only important thing about Frank Castle is what he's doing in the moment. We all know his family was executed by the mob, and that's why he wages a one-man war against crime, and for me personally, that's enough. It's the same reason why Dolph Lundgren's Punisher film has always been the superior version to me, because it's straight to the point. Frank Castle's the Punisher, he's been punishing the guilty for 5 years, he's weakened the mob to the point of extinction, which gives the Yakuza an opportunity to take over. I mean, everything about that movie is classic Punisher, and I'm not saying you can't have more elaborate storylines in Punisher comic books, but Frank Castle shouldn't be the story. Dolph Lundgren's Punisher was not the story in his movie. The story was about Louis Gossett Jr. trying to find Frank while the Yakuza tries to extort the mob into submission. The story happened around Frank, and to me, that's what makes a great Punisher story. And if you don't believe me, go watch Daredevil Season 2. John Bernthal's portrayal of the Punisher in Daredevil Season 2 is so much better than John's Punisher series overall, because John's Punisher series tried to make him the focal point of the story. We had to see Frank get an apartment, read a book every night before bed, struggle to lead a normal life. In Daredevil Season 2, the story was happening around the Punisher, and all of what we saw in Daredevil Season 2 is what we needed to see. Nothing more, nothing less. And don't get it twisted. John is a great Punisher, but his series could have been a lot better. I absolutely loathe Thomas Jane's first Punisher movie, and I hated him as the Punisher for the longest time, until Dirty Laundry came out. In fact, Dirty Laundry is another example. There we have another story happening around Frank. Frank is not the story, Frank just gets involved. Now, Marvel can say what they want to, but a lot of this change to the character is a direct result of protesters utilizing the Punisher logo during the Capitol riots. It's for that reason that I'm not overly excited about this series at all. I'm not excited about this new direction that Frank is going in because it's completely unwarranted and ingenuine. Now, regardless of my opinions, I am going to pick up the new series, or the first issue of the new series, this Wednesday, March 9th, and I'm going to check it out firsthand, and hopefully it surprises me, because I really do love the Punisher character, and I want more Punisher comics in the future. If you guys pick it up, I hope you enjoy it, and feel free, you can come back to the video and let me know what you think of it. I had this idea of maybe doing a review for the new series, starting with issue 1. If that's something you guys would be interested in, let me know. But that's all I've got for you. Thanks for watching.